Hello everyone, today we are going to introduce the India economy. The rapid development of the India economy can be seen in the video. With the development of the India economy, the people's living standards have improved significantly.
To really get a grasp of how India has developed into the country that it has become, we must first talk about its history. India was always prevalent in trading as they had valuable resources, such as spices and textiles. But as seen in the graph, after the 1700s, their share in GDP went down drastically. This is due to the British East India Company. To really get into how the company affected India, we will go into its history too. In the late 1500s, British merchants asked and were granted permission to start trading in India. Now we'll fast forward a little bit to the early 1600s, and they had started their company, which was the British East India Company. At the time, they had a pretty hard start, as many other nations were in India too, such as the Dutch and the Portuguese, and they also had to deal with the Mughal Empire. The company slowly began to grow and started taking over certain trade markets. Luckily for them, as they were growing, the Mughal Empire began to fall, and the British, seeing this as an opportunity, fought against the remaining Mughal leaders in India. Now, seeing that India had no leadership system set up, the British East India Company took over. This was the start of their empire. This went completely against what they were granted permission to do, though, and it started to get noticed from the Queen. And once it was found out what the British East India Company was doing and how much power they had obtained, the British government took the company over. But by this time, the company was a former shell of what it once was, and it had lost a lot of its power and a lot of its share in the market.
I'm going to talk about the absence of industrialization in India. Historians have questioned why India failed to industrialize in the 19th century, as the global cotton industry underwent a technological revolution in the 18th century, while Indian industry stagnated after adopting the flying shuttle, and industrialization began only in the late 19th century. Several historians have suggested that this was because India was still a largely agricultural nation with low commodity money wage levels, arguing that nominal wages were high in breeding, so cotton producers had the incentive to invent and purchase expensive new labor-saving technologies, and that wages level were low in India. So producers prefer to increase output by hiring more workers rather than investing in technology. Economic historians such as Prasanna Parthasarathi have criticized this argument, pointing to earnings data that show real wages in 18th century Bengal and Moisture were higher than in Britain. Instead, he argues that Indian textile prices were lower because of India's lower food prices, which was the result of higher agricultural productivity. Compared to Britain, the silver coin prices of grain were about one-half in Moscow and one-third in Bengal, resulting in lower silver coin prices for Indian textiles, giving them a price advantage in global markets. According to evidence cited by Irfan Harbi, That's the agricultural output and standards of consumption in 19th century Mughal India was higher than in 17th century Europe and early 20th century British India.
Debate continues about the economic impacts of British imperialism on India. This map shows the change in per capita GDP of India from 1820 CE to 2015 CE. All GDP numbers are inflation adjusted to 1990 International Economic dollars. It is not difficult to find that under British rule, India's economic development was almost at zero. The issue was first raised by Edmund Burke, who in the 1780s vehemently attacked the East India Company, claiming that Warren Hastings and other top officials had ruined the Indian economy and society. Indian historian Rajat Canterbury continued this line of reasoning, saying that British rule in the 18th century took the form of plunder and was a catastrophe for the traditional economy.